I'm back here in the park to introduce the next video. We've been studying the dream of Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel chapter 2. And now we're at the bottom of this image at his feet. The feet that consist of a mixture of iron and clay. So what does this mean? Who does this represent? And what does this have to do for us today, in the world we live in today? Well, let's open the Bible and find out what it has to say about the feet, which is a mixture of iron and clay. Today we're going to continue our study of Nebuchadnezzar's dream that we find in Daniel chapter 2. And the vision that he saw, the dream that he saw, represents this image of different types of metal. And we're going to just review this a little bit, and then we're going to look at the feet of iron and part of clay. Let's start in Daniel 2, reading verses 32 and 33. This image head was of fine gold. His breast and his arms were of silver. His belly and his thighs were of bronze, and his legs were of iron. His feet were part of iron and part of clay. We've discovered already that this head of gold was the kingdom of Babylon, with Nebuchadnezzar being this head of gold. The breast and arms of silver represented Medo-Persia, and his belly and thighs of bronze represented Greece and Alexander the Great. And his legs of iron represented the Roman Empire. So what are these feet that are part of iron and part of clay? Well, let's see what we can find out. Let's go to Daniel 2 and read verses 41 through 43. And as to that which you saw, the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it the strength of iron, because you saw the iron mixed with miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly brittle. And as you saw iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mix themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cling to one another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. So this last verse, verse 43, is an important verse that we'll come back to later. But in the meantime, this kingdom of part iron and part clay tells us that the legs of iron, the Roman Empire, are involved in this, because the feet are part of iron and part of clay. Let's go to Daniel chapter 7, and let's read verses 7 and 8. After this I looked in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, frightening and terrifying and very strong, and it had great iron teeth. And it devoured and broke in pieces, and stamped the rest with its feet. And it was different from all the beasts before it, and it had 10 horns. And I was thinking about the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom 3 of the first horns were uprooted. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. We know that this vision that Daniel had in Daniel chapter 7 consisted of 4 different beasts that came up out of the sea. The first one was a lion, which represented Babylon. The second one was a bear, which represented Medo-Persia. The third one was a leopard, that represented Greece, and this fourth beast represents the Roman Empire. And you notice that it was different from all the other beasts because it had 10 horns. So when we look at the feet in the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, how many toes do feet have? They have 10. So the feet of iron and clay are similar to these 10 horns. They represent each other, and we'll find out more about that in a minute. But what's interesting about these horns is that there came up among them another little horn who uprooted 3 of the first horns. And it gives the characteristics of this horn that they had eyes of a man and a mouth speaking great things. So let's continue on. And I want to read Daniel 7:19 through 27 to see what these 10 horns are all about. Verse 19. Then I wanted to know the truth of the 4th beast, which was different from all the other beasts, very frightening, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of bronze, who devoured, broke in pieces, and stamped the rest with his feet. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth speaking very great things, whose appearance was greater than his fellows, I watched. And that horn made war with the saints, and overcame them, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. And the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. And he said, the 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom on the earth, which shall be different from all the kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall trample it and crush it. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise. And another shall arise after them, and he shall be different from the first. And he shall humble 3 kings. And he shall speak words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and plot to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hand until a time, and times, and 1/2 time. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his rulership, to cut off and destroy until the end. And the kingdom, and the rulership, and the greatness of the kingdom under all the heavens shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all kingdoms shall serve and obey him. So here we have these 10 horns in verse 24 that are 10 kings that shall arise. And it talks about this little horn that shall arise after them that shall humble these 3 kings. And then it gives us some of the characteristics of this little horn. And we'll come back to this in a little while. These 10 horns represent these barbarian tribes that came into Rome and divided Rome into 10 kingdoms. These tribes are the Huns, the Ostrogoths, the Visigoths, the Franks, the Vandals, the Suevi, the Burgundians, the Heruli, and the Anglo-Saxons, and the Lombards. These consist of modern-day Europe. And so we know that 3 of these horns, or kings or kingdoms, were uprooted. So these 3 kings that this little horn that came up among them humbled or destroyed are the Heruli, which were destroyed in 493 AD, the Ostrogoths, 538 AD, and the Vandals in 553 AD. They were essentially destroyed when they were driven out of Rome in 538 AD, but they ceased to exist after 553 AD. So of these 3 tribes, there's no trace of any of these tribes in the world today. They were totally destroyed. So when we go back to Daniel chapter 2, we find this verse 43. And as you see the iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mix themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cling to one another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. So this is referring to these 10 toes, or these 10 horns of the vision of Daniel 7. These modern-day kingdoms or countries or powers in modern-day Europe today. So what is it talking about, that they shall mix themselves with the seed of men, but won't cling to one another? Well, when we look at the history of Europe, we find that there was a tendency for a king of one country to marry his son or daughter to a king of another country in order to form alliances to prevent war or to increase their power. The Habsburg strategy is one of these. The royal house of Habsburg became famous for expanding through marriage. Their motto was essentially, let others wage war and Austria marry. And through this strategic marriages, they gain control of Spain, Austria, the Netherlands, part of Italy, and large parts of Central Europe. One example is Philip II of Spain, who ruled a vast empire partly because of the inheritance through marriage alliances. Another example is the British-German connections. Many British monarchs married in the German royal houses. For example, Queen Victoria married Prince Albert, and her descendants married into royal families across Europe. She was called the Grandmother of Europe. And interestingly enough, many of the rulers on the opposing sides that were in this war were her grandchildren. So World War I was known as a war among cousins. So you can see this prophecy that they tried to intermarry. They tried to cling to form these alliances, but they didn't cling to each other. There was still division among them in spite of their being related. So how does the iron in the feet of iron clay represent the Roman Empire today in modern-day Europe? Well, the answer is found in the characteristics of the little horn of Daniel chapter 7. So this little horn that rose up among the 10 horns and destroyed 3 of those horns, what are the characteristics that we find in the Bible? So let's read Daniel 7 again, and let's see if we can pick out these characteristics, starting with verse 19. Then I wanted to know the truth of the 4th beast, which was different from all the others, very frightening, whose teeth were of iron and his nails of bronze, who devoured broken pieces and stamped the rest with his feet. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, that little horn, that's what we're talking about, even that horn had eyes, and a mouth speaking very great things, whose appearance was greater than his fellows. And I watched, and that horn, that little horn, made war with the saints and overcame them, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. And the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. And he said, the 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom on the earth, which shall be different from all the kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall trample it and crush it. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall arise after them, and he shall be different from the first, and he shall humble 3 kings. So this is another characteristic of this little horn. He destroyed 3 of these other horns, or 3 of these other kings or kingdoms. Verse 25, and he shall speak words against the Most High. He'll speak against God, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and plot to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and 1/2 times, talking about the saints of the Most High. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his rulership, to cut off and destroy until the end. And the kingdom and rulership and the greatness of the kingdom under all the heavens shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all kingdoms shall serve and obey him. So these are the characteristics of this little horn power. That's part of the feet that are a mixture of iron and clay. He shall humble 3 kings. He destroyed 3 kingdoms. The 3 of these horns, they no longer are in existence. That horn that had eyes and a mouth speaking very great things gives him a human characteristics. He shall speak words against the Most High, speak against God, whose appearance was greater than his fellows, the other 10 kingdoms, or the remaining 7 kingdoms. That horn made war with the saints and overcame. and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. So this horn, little horn, persecuted the people of God. They shall be given into his hand until a time, and times, and 1/2 times. So this has to deal with the time that this little horn persecuted the people of God. And he will plot to change times and laws. Of course, this is all in reference to the Bible, so we need to consider what laws have a time element associated with them. So these are the characteristics of this little horn, this iron that's in the feet of iron and clay mixture that is a continuance of the Roman Empire. So who is this little horn? In the next video, we'll talk about these characteristics and who this little horn is and how it's the iron mixed with clay in the world that we live in today. May God continue to bless you as you study His Word.